Scholars Unbound is a bi monthly podcast or video series that showcases the voices of scholars who know no boundaries when it comes to the pursuit of knowledge. You will hear insights from their experiences as international scholars and how these influence their research, hoping to inspire future scholars to be fearless, global, and unbound. I'm your host, Dalia Simangan.
Hi everyone, I'm super excited for this episode because my guest is a very good friend of mine, joining us even though it's quite late where he's at. He's an assistant professor of economics at Michigan State University since 2015. He earned his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the National Institute of Technology in Gujarat, India in 2006, and then his master's degree in international development from the International University of Japan or IUJ in 2010. It was in IUJ where we met, and we were both recipients of the Matsushita or Panasonic Scholarship. And then after that, he did his PhD in Sustainable Development from the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University in the US in 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Dr. Prabhat Barnwal. Hi, Prabhat. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Hi, Dalia. Thanks for inviting me.
First, the quintessential question during this time: how are you coping with this COVID 19 pandemic, both personally and professionally?
Personally, it has not affected me much compared to what many other people are going through. Everybody is healthy, everybody is safe in my immediate family, in my wife's immediate family. But professionally, yeah, it has been tough. Last year, I somehow strategically planned my whole course load for the last academic year in the spring and this academic year in fall, and all my courses fall. Courses were there during COVID, which was a big time. Which was a big factor for time, especially because childcare was not there and my wife works full time. But beyond not finding time for research, one more thing I think which has affected people who do international research is that they cannot travel. And I'm no exception here. I usually travel a lot for my field work. And because of COVID, I have not be able to go to field to 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 see my field projects, which have anyway kind of paused or semi paused. So I think, yeah, so professionally it has been a big impact for sure. Personally, it's all good.
I understand that your research interests include development and environmental economics, and you have mentioned doing field research. Can you tell us some of your ongoing research projects?
I work with data, and I would be classified as a like applied microeconomist. And in my research, I use experimental and quasi-experimental methods to answer questions causally, as we define it in economics. And let me describe one project which might be more of general interest to people or to audiences of this talk. So with my co-authors, I'm working on analyzing how democratic transitions may affect economic development. So far, we know that democracy increases economic development, and what we try to answer in this paper: how democracy increases economic development or economic growth. Now, this is difficult question to answer because you cannot randomly assign democracy to some countries and not assign democracy to other country. If you look for correlation only, then it's very difficult because there are other omitted factors which could drive both the adoption of democracy and economic development.
What I want our audience to also know is that you graduated top of our batch in IUJ, and we were so proud of you. And we are good friends, but I don't think I ever asked you before, how did you come to choose or study economics?
That's a very good question. I guess when we were studying together 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, um, that was pretty much the turn which decided why I'm in economics now. But Yeah, I'm a non-traditional economist in many ways. One way I can describe it is that never took any econ classes or econ major when I was in undergrad. I did undergrad in electrical engineering, and I became a manager, a shop floor manager in a car factory in India after that, and did different kind of jobs. But eventually, I realized that my interest in public policy and economics, and so I decided to go for a master's. And even that time, going for academic career was not the top plan. It was plan B or C or D maybe, but not the plan A. When I went to IUJ, that was the first time I got exposed to the rigorous research, thanks to professors who were there, and most of them had PhD from US, and that kind of gave me some idea what economics research is. And I think the final decision I took somewhere in summer of 2009 when I was working as an intern with the United Nations in Bangkok. And I kind of liked the place, but I also saw that it was not very, I was not able to add value, or I would not be able to add value given how things were there. And that basically makes me realize my competitive strength, that I am better off in academia. And right after that summer, I started taking economics more seriously. I mean, seriously in the sense that as serious as one can take when you're thinking about a career in a particular academic discipline. And that was the time, I think somewhere around 2009 summer, that I decided that I will go for economics. One more reason I have been interested in public policy or economics is that I grew up in a very underdeveloped area in India, which is in North India at India-Nepal border, and which kind of shaped my interest, but I did not have opportunities to get high quality training, or like to see that how research in economics can be very fulfilling at that time. But it was always in the back of my mind to understand how some policies are more effective, some government programs are more effective. uh, how should government think about policy alleviation, and other things which are pretty much related to government functioning, as well as how people respond to government programs. And it turned out, at least it occurred to me, that economics is probably a very good field, a very good discipline to study those issues.
Why did you decide to do your graduate studies in the US? And related to that, what are the factors that made you decide to stay and continue your research in the US?
So it was not so much what I decided versus what university decided. Like, it was not so much like I had an option to choose and I just decided to go to US. It was more like where I got the opportunity. I did apply to other universities in Canada, UK, and US. Though there is definitely some bias here. So first thing I learned, looking at profiles of my professors as well as visiting professors at IUJ, that people who have got training in US universities or US type universities in other countries, they were quite research productive, in the sense that I like their way of research. Let me put it this way. And that basically gives me first indication that probably I should just try to copy their path somehow. uh, Second thing, I also got some advice, like looking at rankings of programs and all. And turns out economics is particularly one type of discipline where top programs, top schools are highly concentrated in US for some regions. And then it becomes pretty easy to see that, like, most of the schools I would be applying to are in US. And that's how it happens. I applied to around 10, 11 schools. 7, 8 of them were in US. And then eventually, the school, some schools gave me admissions offer, and I chose the best one, which can give me high quality training, with coursework, as well as in terms of research supervision as well as in terms of networking, and that's how I ended up in US for my graduate coursework. Um, the reason to stay in US is after my PhD coursework. I mean. Was a mix of two things. One is personal. My wife and I, we both were looking for a job, and we at least had one constant, more or less, that we should try to be in the same country. And she already had got a job in Seattle that time, and I had some other offers in other country as well. But it made more sense to stay in the same country. But again, like my search here was not based on the criteria that I wanted to stay in US. I remember like in the first round I had interviews from like flyouts from four different countries and one school in each country: Canada, Hong Kong, India, and US. But eventually, the second criteria came in also, that like to go to a place which provides a good research environment to especially, that is very important, as how academia works, that when you are in tenure track, then you have to publish a lot. So you do want to be in a place which can help you, in the sense that there are good colleagues, and who can provide you feedback and all these things. So that way, Michigan State, where I am right now, turned out to be the best possible place where I should be in, out of my options, which I had that time. So that's how I ended up just staying here in US and not going back to Asia, or going somewhere else.
I still remember very clearly during those times when you were applying for PhDs, when we were master's students in Japan. And I remember you were also so generous of your time giving me guidance about PhD applications back then. I was so stubborn and I was so stubborn and lost, back then, and couldn't keep up. But later on, you were the reason why I was able to visit Columbia University as a PhD student. So I'm just forever grateful for that, Prabhat. And somewhat related to that and I also want to emphasize in this episode, is your experience applying for this PhD programs in the US. And I believe you have a lot of practical tips for those who are thinking of doing the same. And given that, can you walk us through your experience applying for those PhD programs in the US and preparing yourself for a graduate program at Columbia University?
The PhD is a big commitment, and that is very important to understand before anybody applies. So I guess you mentioned the phase where you are probably thinking about it, but you have not made your mind. Only difference between you and me was that I had made my mind, and that's why I was all in. So given like 5 6 years, or maybe 4 years, the time period it takes to do PhD, and it happens during the prime of your life, usually. So it's a very big decision. So I guess the first thing is, like, think a lot before you take this decision. For anyone who is considering PhD, it's not only a study program. It's something which is going to change your life, and it is going to take a lot from your side. So only if you're super positive that this is the path, and you are all in, then one should go for it. After that, I guess there are like things are much more easier now because of internet, and so much resources are there. Try to find out, like, uh, you know you should look into your discipline, the discipline of your interest, like what are the criteria universities look for. It might get boring as I describe it, but I will give you some specific examples. For instance, in economics, there are multiple criteria. One of them is, like, say, GRE. And it occurred to me very early on, based on my conversation with others, and as well as resources on internet, that GRE is a criteria which can get you rejected very easily, but it is not going to get you selected. So these kind of information are strategic, and one should look for it. And so that I basically saved myself from investing too much time in studying for GRE, especially GRE verbal, which could be very difficult for me to score higher because of my, like, I'm not a native speaker, or I studied in Hindi mediums till pretty late in my school time. So this kind of information can help you in focusing your energy to the right place. Second thing, which is again discipline specific for economics, is that economics PhD programs basically look for math skill. It's kind of uh, uh, confusing, like why econ PhD program should be looking for math skill. But I think there's some sort of sense in is there that like you come with math skill and we can teach you economics. If you don't come with math skill, we cannot teach you economics. So that was the second important information I found. And I couldn't do much at that time because it was quite late. I had already done my undergrad, and I did not have a lot of math courses in my master's program in Japan. But at least I can put emphasis on this in my letters, or I can choose my letter writers who can tell about my math skills, etc. So that way, it helped me to put the best foot forward. Against this requirement of having a lot of maths in my on my transcript, and not only transcript but also showing it confidently that I can handle maths which is required to for the coursework in first 2 years in econ program. And after that, I guess, like, yeah, this the third point may be common in all discipline is that you need good letters. You don't need letters from very famous people or something. You just need good letters, people who know how to what to write in the letters, and people who know you based on your coursework performance or your research assistantship, etc., etc. So that's where I worked a little bit more. I took classes, more and more classes from the same set of professors who I thought that would be writing letter for me. I also worked as an RA for some of them to make sure that they can also write about my research abilities and all. And I think this all paid off well. I mean, I don't know what they wrote in the letter, but based on the outcome, it seems like they wrote good things, and that's how it turned out fine. Um, yeah, I guess for all discipline, the game is somewhat different, but it's very important to invest a lot of time early on to understand how this selection process takes place, and then prioritize what is important and what is not important. Things which are not important, don't pay much attention to it. Put like minimal effort so that you don't get rejected, like GRE verbal for econ PhD applications. But things which are important, like maths training and good recommendation letters, do everything which you can do to make sure that your profile comes out strong. After that, it's all luck. There's a lot of luck here. Uh, in my case, it was always luck, in the sense that I can give you example. When I got admission in IUJ Japan, I was waitlisted first, and then I got off the waitlist. When I got when I got first heard about result from Columbia CEPA, I was waitlisted, and then I eventually got off the waitlist. So there's like this like getting off the waitlist is not in anybody's hand.
Great. These are very helpful tips, Prabhat. And what I learned from here, from what you shared to us today, is that if you deciding to do a PhD is not something you can do spontaneously, or just, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do a PhD. And based on your experience, what I learned is that, it takes careful planning, and it takes time to tailor your studies, your experience, suitable for the program that you have chosen, or the university that you have chosen. So thank you very much, Dr. Prabhat Barnwal, for sharing your insights with us today. These are really good practical tips for those who are considering their graduate studies in the US and even elsewhere. And your honesty with regard to this pros and cons of an academic job and the role of luck and hard work is really eye-opening. Thank you very much for giving us a glimpse of the realities of academia. So your concluding message for our listeners or viewers, please.
Yeah, so I can just repeat the main thing, which I still see, that like once you go for PhD, you have to be all in. It's a long process getting the PhD. It's even longer and more difficult process to stay in academia or research job. But if this is something which you value, or you are motivated for, or you find that you cannot do anything else, there's of course no other way for you, and you have to do PhD. That is the best scenario. PhD is not a kind of course given like how much time it takes and how much effort it takes. It's not the kind of program which you can do and then you can see what you want to do. I mean, there are of course some examples you will find here and there, But given the opportunity cost of spending 5 years of youth in a basement of a library, it might not make sense. So think a lot before you decide on taking on going for a PhD. And once you decide, then go all in.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please consider leaving a comment or rating at iTunes or any of your preferred podcast hosting platforms. For details about upcoming episodes and how to support the Scholars Unbound project, visit daliasimangan.com/scholars unbound with the link in our show notes.